Hello Booktube, I'm Scott.
I'm Nelle.
We're gunpowder.fiction.and.plot. We're excellent. You should subscribe and give this video a thumbs up.
Do it now.
Do it now. Now, our most watched video is our original version of the DNF Tag.
You're all boring and you don't watch any of our cool videos. Only our DNF Tag.
Our DNF Tag is cool.
You're right.
Anyway, what we thought would be interesting is we have watched every DNF Tag that
Literally
we
all
could
of
search
them.
for. So I think we've watched every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
We've not commented on every video, but we've commented on quite a lot of them. And yeah, it's been an interesting experience.
Yeah, the DNF when we first made the DNF Tag, it was because we were interested in people's ideas around DNFing, and I definitely think that that is one of the reasons why it did as well as it did, and so many people participated in that conversation. But there's a few things that like really surprised me.
Yeah. Also, there's a couple of people that really got me thinking about my stance on DNF and whether I should change it.
Ooh. And also, at some point in this video, we should probably do a list of the just ridiculously awesome responses to the DNF Tag that everyone should go and watch. The best of the best.
Yeah, we should have created that list before filming, but, you know, we'll wing it.
We will. It'll be the ones that we remember. Let's look at the questions. I think that's a really interesting way to do it.
I think I want to do that, but I think before we do that, I want to talk about two booktubers.
You want to talk about Emma and Sean.
Yeah, I think Emma and Sean have quite a similar philosophy. So Emma is Emma from Drinking by My Shelf. Sean is Sean the Book Maniac. They are two big booktubers, which I'm sure you've heard of. If you haven't, check them out. They are both excellent for
different reasons.
They're both hilarious, but their senses of humour are like chalk and cheese. And
I really do enjoy the dryly stated but exceptionally vivid descriptions that Sean slips into everyday conversation just to be Sean.
Speaking of dryly stated and ridiculous, that is actually something that Emma does all the time. She says something with utter confidence that she knows is silly and keeps going.
Yes, I suspect Emma exaggerates where Sean describes.
Yes. Also, if you guys don't watch each other's channels, I think you probably should. Anyway, they both have that. So Emma called herself the Queen of DNF. Sean called himself
the Empress.
The God Empress.
The God Empress.
So I think Sean wins on the title front there.
Yes.
But Sean calls it bailing and Emma calls it DNFing, which I wonder if that's a transatlantic thing or something.
I feel like Sean is the kind of person who might not like a, what's it called? An anagram? No, that's not the word I'm looking for. Initials for something.
Oh. Probably an anagram.
I can't imagine Sean saying LOL out loud.
Maybe he will now. So both of these booktubers DNF hard.
Yes.
Right?
So hard.
So hard. And that blew my mind. Like, why would you... Books are good. Why would you DNF so hard? But both of these booktubers are basically like, I want to read 5-star books.
And only 5-star books.
And Emma said something that I thought was really interesting. She said, even if you DNF a book that would have been 5 stars, there are 5-star books that you will never read. So, you know, as long as you're getting some form of accuracy with your DNFing, it doesn't matter if you DNF a 5-star book because that makes you closer to another 5-star book that you wouldn't have got to otherwise.
Yeah, I get what she's saying. Like, mathematically, you don't have to be 100% accurate for this still to be a winning strategy.
And it makes sense that, like, there's more books than you will ever be able to read in this world. But what it never occurred to me was there are more 5-star books in this world than I'm ever going to be able to read. And trying to get to as many of them as possible is good.
So I find that grates on my... Because I don't rank or rate books, that sort of doesn't sit in with my philosophy as well as it has impacted yours.
Look. I know you've enjoyed reading Octavia Butler's Kindred a lot more than you enjoyed reading The Catcher in the Rye.
Yes. But does that mean I haven't gotten value and entertainment out of mocking Holden Caulfield for the rest of my life? Actually, no, it doesn't. I am glad that I read The Catcher in the Rye, because otherwise how else would I tell you that Holden Caulfield is a douche?
Best Holden Caulfield insults in the comments, please.
As always.
As always. In fact, any video of ours, if you don't know what to say and you'd just like to comment, just insult Holden Caulfield.
Cheers.
Yeah. Getting back to the topic. I actually think that this is interesting. I read, when we did Jane Austen July, I read a book that I didn't like. It was a historical book about Jane Austen that was written by her nephew, and it is one of the books that made Jane Austen famous. The book itself is rubbish, but I found it quite interesting that that was the book that captivated Victorians to like Jane Austen. I found that quite an interesting, rewarding thing, but the book itself was terrible.
I've also read books that I found terrible that have enriched my experience of books to come.
Yes.
Like, reading the Bible was not an enjoyable experience. However, I'm glad I did it in like year 10, because all throughout university it really helped my literary studies. And while I probably don't have the memory to get as much out of that particular read anymore, there are definitely books that enhance other books, and their value exists beyond their own covers.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's exactly true. And
I don't think there's a wasted read. I guess that's what I'm come down to.
So even though there wouldn't be a wasted read, there would still be an optimum point to DNF.
Yeah, I totally get that. I understand what you're going for. I do. But it's just not how I think about the reading experience. So for me, what was a bit of a revolutionary, oh my god, light bulb moment for you, it doesn't quite fit for me.
Yeah, I also think that what Emma and Sean haven't considered is, what if technology grows and we live forever?
Oh my god.
Yeah, like,
yeah.
Will you two go back and read all your DNFs if you're granted immortality by science?
I want an answer to that question.
Yes.
In the comments.
Yeah.
A demand.
Yeah, but I think that's fascinating, and I think that booktubers that don't have strong opinions on whether they should DNF should actually watch their videos, because it really...
Yeah, I've got to say, those two very much expressed that end of the spectrum very well. But I didn't feel that there were many people who expressed the other end of the spectrum very well.
Can I say that one thing that I did notice is that the more experienced you were as a reader, the more likely you were to DNF. And the newer you were as a reader, the more likely you were to be a completionist. And I wonder if that is because the less books you have read, the less truly horrible books you have read.
I definitely think that every experienced reader has one book in their past that made them go, oh, this is what bad looks like.
Yes. Actually, this would be a really interesting question to just ask the booktube ether. What is the first truly terrible book you have read?
Yeah, the one that cracked your brain open and made you realise that trash really does exist.
I wouldn't call the one that I hated trash, but I would just call it horrible, and that was Moby Dick. Do you have an answer?
Yeah, I still think that The Crying of Lot 49 is probably my first worst and my worst book. that I've
literary stream of nonsense.
It was so bad.
I meant to say stream of conscience, but I
But
said stream of nonsense.
it is just nonsense. It's horrible. It's horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible.
All right, I'll why don't I bring up the tag?
Yeah, let's talk about the questions, because there was a few responses that made me realise my own assumptions about DNFing and the language that I use about DNFing.
So, in the grand tradition of us being prepared,
we're going to pull up our own tag now.
We're pulling up our own tag, which we hadn't prepared earlier. July the 12th was when we created it.
There you go.
Okay.
Well, that's when we posted it.
So, there were 8 questions and then the tag prompt. So the first question, do you DNF? I mean, if you didn't DNF, you didn't do the video, did you?
No, I think there were a few people who were like, I don't really DNF, but...
Yeah, a few people
But when it came to the crunch, everyone had an answer to... What popular book have you DNF?
Yeah, nobody failed to answer that.
But I've got to say that I don't think that I DNF very often.
But I think if you didn't DNF at all, then... Why were you doing this? Because you couldn't answer the questions. I think that's the
interesting part of the conversation. That's actually what I wanted to get at. I wanted to get at both ends of the spectrum. And I don't feel like we got a lot from that end of the spectrum that really said why they're completionist and why...
Yeah. I think there are some arguments about being completionist, about what reading adds, and we've discussed them, and just trying to figure out what times you should be completionist and what times,
and whether you're super,
and what you get out of the book. And
but I also think that readers in general are quite completionist people. We are so, like, how many of us have rebought an entire series just so we can have matching covers? How many of us
how many of you are cringing because Nell has 2 versions of Stephen King Dark Tower #7 up there on her TBR, but doesn't have book 3? Yeah, how many of you have noticed that?
How many of you have a list of authors that you want to read the complete works of, or have read the complete works of? Like, I think by nature we're actually, we're all Pokemon trainers. We've got to catch them all. That's the personality type. So I think that it's actually like a revelation when we become DNF positive. You know what I mean? Like, I actually think it's against the nature of a bookish person.
Do you know what I wish we had have asked? What author which you love did you DNF a book
for? Yes. Because I very nearly, I think that my most recent Margaret Atwood book that I read, if we had have not been reading it as a group, I think I would have not finished it.
Wow, you couldn't finish it on the deadline. It was so...
It took me a long time to finish it.
It was not calling you, was it?
It was not the things that I love about her as a writer.
Yeah. All right. Now, question 2 was your veiled insult at me, and you just wanted to get other booktubers to insult me.
And it worked. Thank you, Booktube, for completely agreeing with me and telling Scott that he's a moron.
If you DNF a book, does it count towards books read for the month? Now, you've even worded this in a way that, like, misinterprets what I do. Like, the amount of booktubers like, that's cheating and stuff.
Booktube reiterated my opinion, and I deeply appreciate all of you for being on my side.
But see, here's the thing.
Out of how many? There was like 3 people who watched our video and were like, yeah, we can see Scott's point. And the rest of them were like, no.
I did like one booktuber that said I was the reasonable one and you were the...
And I was the unreasonable one.
Yeah.
Well, that's often what people say.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's relatively true.
It's just because you don't yell as much as me.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is...
Quiet does not equal reasonable.
Right. Pre-booktube would get a lot of my books off just lists on the internet, right?
Yeah.
And I would count a book that I DNF'd towards reading that book off the list because
you'd attempted it.
I'd attempted it. And then I wanted to have an opinion on the book, right?
Yes.
And then I would put it into Goodreads and it would count it towards my books read for the month. And I was like, well, Goodreads counts it. That's just what happens.
Works, yeah.
Right. But that...
I do think that it is valid if you have DNF'd a book.
Sorry. this is going to just end in
That
problems.
looks like a bad thing. There's a cable and a dock. Let's just disconnect the two.
Why can you not go to sleep when we film? Why do you have to be active?
Because we're having an animated conversation and he's interested.
And then, no, he's not. He wants to play fetch. I'm sitting on 4 toys that he's brought in mid-conversation. Anyway, yeah. So I think that I mean, it was funny that everybody was insulting me, but not really. I mean, I am a massive cheat, apparently.
You are a massive cheat.
You think I'd remember the order of the questions we've watched?
We have watched that many. I think we're coming close to one that I want to talk about.
Is there a difference between DNF and just putting it down for a bit?
I don't think that I expressed in our version of the tag something that I think really came through when other people talk about DNFing. None of you are angry. What? No, if I have DNF'd a book, it's because it has made me angry and I hate it, and I'm going to burn all the copies of it I ever see. It is an impassioned decision.
Yeah.
That is the difference between DNFing and putting it down for a bit. Even if I never return to a book, if I don't hate it, it's not DNF'd. I'll come back to it.
You're all spirituals, hot smoking, long-haired hippies, really, aren't you? Pacifists.
There was no vitriol in the, except from Sean, but he just likes to be, we can tell that he likes to play that way.
Yes, but that was entertaining and good. That's what we wanted.
Yeah. But if I DNF a book, when I say it's DNF'd, it's because I hated it and it was a piece of tripe. Yeah. Yeah,
I'm not sure that Sean thinks that way, but he still got angry.
Yeah, it made me happy.
That was, but it was interesting that, it's just like...
It's just not really working for me and I DNF'd it. That's not what I mean when I say DNF.
I went to the ice cream shop and they let me try the flavour before I had it, and I thought mandarin was a weird flavour of ice cream, so I just went for choc orange instead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I definitely, if I feel that way about it, I'm not counting it as a DNF. I might put it down, but I'm not counting it as a DNF. And maybe that's the difference. Maybe I DNF more than I say I do, because I don't use that language unless I'm
see, the thing is,
filled with loathing.
You have a pile of books that you have started and not finished. If you had finished every book that you had started, you would have achieved your Goodreads goal already, and but you haven't, and you wouldn't have read other books as well, but you have that huge list of books.
I often read 3 or 4 books at a time, and sometimes one of them gets sort of put down for more than a couple of days, and then it takes me a while to come back to them, and sometimes it takes me a year to come back to them. I started a book while we were away in China that I finished this year.
Oh, what book was that?
The Wasp Factory.
Oh,
which I hated and should have DNF'd with fiery vengeance.
Did you?
But I don't think I would have
that because it was one of my favourites, though.
Yes.
This is something that we didn't discuss. A lot of times, sorry.
I finished that book because it's one of your favourites, 100%. And as his partner, I wanted to understand what on earth he liked about that piece of shit. And he liked the ending, which was terrible.
I liked a lot more than the ending.
Yeah, it's crap. It's a crap book. Absolutely horrible.
One of the best books I've read ever.
We do not agree on the Wasp Factory.
Actually,
but it took me, if you count from the day I picked it up to the day I finished it, it took me 2 years to read that book.
Yeah.
Because I started it when we were on holiday in China, and that's 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I finished it this year. So just because I put it down for a ridiculously long time does not mean it's not getting come back to.
Well, yeah, I think that some people are like that, but a lot of times you put a book down and I suspect that you're never coming back to it.
I think you're wrong. Also, I have a very, very good memory for the written word. and if I get partway through a book, I can not reread that start of the book.
Sorry.
Even if I pick it up several years later, I am very good at being able to pick it up from where I left off, regardless of how much time has elapsed.
Does that ruin rereading for you?
Yes. Yeah, it makes... I definitely reread less because I remember so clearly the language from my first read.
Oh, well, see, when I'm rereading, I'm often like remembering what's going to happen next as I'm I'm rereading one of my favourite books right now, Middlemarch, and like I'm just remembering characters that I forgot existed, and I'm remembering, little bits that I forgot happened, but I've not actually come up to those.
Yeah, I know it's like to the point of like the language used and things like that.
So you've got a freak memory, and I need a trigger.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not consistent. It's not every book I ever read, but it is the majority of them.
And the ones you want to reread are probably going to be...
Yeah, and sometimes it makes it more enjoyable because it really makes it that...
Yeah.
That ability to look again and find new things is enhanced by having a good memory, I think.
Yeah.
But that's a whole different thing.
All right. Question 4. What popular books have you DNF'd? You've DNF'd a lot of popular books, booktube, but nothing that really...
I expected you all to get into big fights about it, and you didn't. It was disappointing.
I know, you were just fanning the flames and nothing happened.
Stirring the pot.
Similar, what book do you wish you DNF'd?
So many people had difficulty with this question. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the people who were uncomfortable with the idea of like regretting finishing a book.
So you're just like enjoying like mentally hurting people with this tag, is that?
A little bit.
A little bit. Have you ever attempted to read a DNF, and has this ever been successful for you? So this was interesting because I didn't think that many people would have done this, but this is something that
really common.
Everybody had done.
Pretty much everyone had picked up a book that they had given up on and tried again, and not everyone enjoyed it. Some of them reaffirmed their decision to bail, but...
The other thing, it pointed out why we read books sometimes is not always about us. So one of the things that got brought up a few times is, I wish I had a DNF this book, but it was a book club book. That got said a little bit.
Yeah, or I had to read it for school.
Yeah. And, I mean...
I don't like an obliged read. It definitely slows me down if I feel obligated.
I think, we were running a book club, and I got so frustrated at it because I was like, all the books, I don't like any of the books. Is something wrong with my brain?
Well, yes.
Oh, is this, Anyway, that's a different topic altogether. Yeah, so what was that? Have you ever attempted to reread?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was...
Yeah, I thought that was surprising. I was very interested to see how many of you had actually reattempted.
Yeah. Now, the last book on the tag was, do you choose more or less risky titles because of your stance on DNF? This was the most misunderstood question, and I thought that this was best question.
I also think it was a really interesting question. Those people who got into it and like really evaluated it, I feel like it prompted them to actually almost reconsider their DNFing stance.
Yeah.
Because it did frame it in that idea of, you've only got so many books in your life. Do you take bigger risks because you're willing to toss them aside at page 10? Or...
I think it pointed out to me how differently half of booktube think than the other half, because I will always, if somebody says I'm wrong about an author or whatever, I will like listen to them and, for example, I read Elizabeth Gaskell's North and South this month after saying Elizabeth Gaskell was the most boring author I've ever read. Ever read. And I have to say that North and South is an exceptional book, and I loved it. Right? And that is what I would have considered a risky book.
Yes.
Right? But the amount of people that just didn't get take a risk, like try an author that you don't think you will like and expand your horizons.
Yeah, I mean, and I do think that comes down to maybe another conversation that should go around booktube is, why do you read? Like, do you read to expand your horizons and to grow your brain, or do you read like purely as entertainment?
Yeah.
Because I think everyone's on that spectrum. It's just like where.
Well, I mean, look, for me personally, if a book is not exercising my brain, then it's never going to make 5 stars. And if a book...
No, but I've read some like smashing entertaining books.
Yeah, I have.
That I would rate quite highly. But you're right, they don't have that same quality of a smashing entertaining book that also stretches your little brain cells a bit.
And by the same token, I've read some very brilliant literary fiction that was boring as sin, that I hated. And I think that...
Yeah, I've read some stuff that I hated but was good for my brain. I've also read some beautifully written, like just gorgeous, but boring stories. And...
Yeah.
Like...
And do you know, one of the books that we read, which isn't a particularly literary fiction book, but I know a lot of booktube will know this, The Night Circus.
Yeah, that was gorgeously like evocative writing. You know, it's a really nice atmospheric...
It says a lot. If you like that book as a 5-star read, it says a lot about what you like about reading.
Yes.
Right? And if that book was a bit meh for you, then it says what you value in a book, you know.
Oh, yeah, and my reaction was both. So...
Well, so you're, like, aware that you like that, like, pretty writing.
Well, I think I take what I can from a book.
Yeah, that's...
I'm a vulture. I'll take anything.
Yeah, well, I think that, like, that book lacked a storyline, and I still rated it 3 stars. Like,
yeah,
it's, you know, yeah.
So, before we go, I think we should list the corkers.
The corkers. Well, first of all, I'm a big fan of Drag Race, and any man that wants to dress up as a woman, or anybody that wants to do a bit of gender blurring, is good. So watch BookTube with Simon for, if nothing else, the scene where he has dressed up as a woman.
Yeah, his version of the DNF tag, but basically every video he makes is incredible. Because he really just goes the extra mile. He doesn't just sit and talk at the camera like we do, like lazy people. Yeah,
that's it. He is what, you know, what somebody funny could be if they had a work ethic.
Yeah.
What he has done for the DNF tag is not anything special by his standards, but it is special.
By DNF tag standards, yeah, for sure. And then...
I also really enjoyed, as far as another fun presentation, I really enjoyed Jess the Book Freak.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, where and she actually does that sort of similar style where, so in her tag she dressed up as a police officer, not a detective rather, and she quizzed herself, and she did I always enjoy it when a booktuber does like one shot in one costume, another shot in another costume.
Yeah.
And she does her tags like that, where she asks herself her tags as
different characters.
And that is very entertaining, just that format.
Yes.
Who else?
I think some of the really early discussions of this tag really treated it as a conversation, as a booktube group conversation, and I really liked that. Steve Donahue and
Roz from Skelly Dandling.
That's who I wanted, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that might be who.
Yeah.
It wasn't who you wanted. I was going to add her to the.
Yeah. And I think that conversation was sort of rounded out by Sean's contribution to it, because everyone in that little social circle was waiting for Sean's contribution. So it sort of finalised that discussion and rounded it out nicely. But I really appreciated the way that they approached it as a conversation.
Yeah, I enjoyed Sarah M.G. Reid's version of it. It was one of the very first versions of it, but I remember her throwing a book behind her and laughing. So that I quite enjoyed too. But to be honest, we have watched a lot, and a lot of booktubers that we love have done this tag as well.
Yeah, for sure. Just because you're not listed here it just means that a lot of them were good. These were very good.
And to be honest, a lot of them were very good and would have made the list if we had have done
this video 2 months ago,
or an hour ago, or in an hour's time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a little bit like who you're in the mood for when you're speaking.
Yeah, we're not going to do a Simon and say if you're not on this list, it's because you. What do you say?
You're rubbish and you need to do better videos.
You're rubbish and you need to make better videos. That's not what we're saying.
He didn't actually just be mean.
No, he totally did. Go and watch his video to see how wrong I am.
Yeah. But yeah, I think there was just a lot of good content out there around this, and I think you wrote an excellent tag now, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm awesome. But also it was a fun discussion, and I've enjoyed sort of like adding to it again.
Yeah. I would, I've enjoyed learning from other people, and I would be curious if you were one of the early people to do the DNF tag, and have you seen a bunch of other people do it, and has
then
that
gone,
changed
ooh,
your opinion?
have you changed your mind? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to know if that happened. All right, well, we have spoken ad nauseum.
Yes.
So it's probably time to go and let these fine people watch somebody more intelligent or entertaining. No.
Just, there's more videos.
Yeah. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, comment, ring the bell.
Watch everything we've ever made.
Yeah. Donate money to something for us. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.